Hi, my name is David Tillman. I am predominantly an acoustic fingerstyle guitarist, and I am continually trying to find the best acoustic amplification options for myself. Most recently, I've been looking at a couple of amplifier and pickup combinations and decided to make this video because it seems that the Schertler vs. AER amplifiers and the K&K vs. Trance Audio pickups are common comparisons that myself and others have been curious about. I'll start with just a bit of background and why I focused on these specific products. So definitely skip ahead if you just want to hear the comparisons. I perform quite frequently in various settings, and I typically perform standing as well as utilizing a PA system. It seems that whenever you talk about acoustic guitar pickups, someone always chimes in that an external microphone sounds the best. Yes, agreed, but I think context dependent. Relying only on an external microphone would not be an option for myself, and I think for most performers. Regarding how I utilize the amplifier, although I may have the occasional small gig where the amplifier is my sole sound source, I'm typically using it as a DI out to the PA. With performing in sometimes loud spaces and also small venues that don't always allow for ideal PA speaker monitor placement, feedback is a constant issue. For the past several years, I've been using the K&K Pure system, which is their passive bridge plate piezo system. I've also in the past used their Trinity system, which includes a microphone. I have ran these systems through both their external Pure preamp and their Quantum Blender. There are a couple of reasons why I settled on the piezo-only system, though, without the microphone. With the microphone added to the system, I think it did improve the overall quality of the sound, but you do need to use a stereo TRS cable to then externally blend the signal. I kind of prefer the simplicity of just being able to rely on any mono TS cable. I also found that in live settings, I would keep turning down the microphone to avoid feedback until in many cases it was completely off. I thought the K&K preamp sounded great, but I didn't personally really like the physical layout of them. I don't want to have to clip a preamp to myself, and I prefer something in a pedal form that's robustly built and easy to quickly adjust and view from above. I did use the Red Eye preamp, which a lot of people speak highly of for a while, which I thought sounded great. But I did miss not having some EQ options. And so most recently I have been using the Grace Design ALEX. I think it sounds as good as the K&K preamps, has lots of features including a notch filter, high pass filter, adjustable mids. It also has tuner output and 2 foot switches for muting and signal boost. It also has an adjustable input impedance, so you can set it to the recommended 1 mega ohm for the K&K system. In the past, I have also used the LR Baggs Anthem system, which blends an undersaddle pickup and microphone with an onboard preamp. To be honest, at low volumes, so practicing at home or maybe recording from the onboard system, I did find that the Anthem system was kind of the best sounding system I have played and heard so far. Unfortunately, I found it to be unusable in a live setting. The feedback, even at low volumes, was difficult to impossible to control. The EQing and notch filters that were necessary kind of so altered the sound that it negated any improved sound quality relative to the K&K. Less microphone helped, but I very much don't like the sound of just an undersaddle pickup only, not to mention the alterations that have to be made to the instrument. So for these reasons, I've preferred foregoing an onboard microphone altogether, and I find the bridge plate pickups to be more natural sounding than an undersaddle pickup. Overall, I have been quite pleased with the K&K system, but I have been curious about the Trance Audio system and so thought I would compare the two. I will demo and then remove the K&K system, and then I'll install and demo the Trance Audio Amulet Ultra Dual Mono system. With this system, I am looking forward to having an onboard volume control as well as seeing what the onboard tone control offers. Additionally, with this system, you are able to adjust the gain of the bass and the treble pickups independently. I find this attractive because I've had the K&K system on about a half dozen instruments, and at times there has been some small variation between the sensitivity and volume of the 3 piezos. I think this is subtle and not noticeable if strumming or flat picking, but does at times interfere with fingerstyle playing. Of note, I will be removing my current K&K system and then installing the Trance Audio system. Trance Audio does not recommend this. They state that the superglue from the K&K system alters the bridge and the sound of their system. Regardless, I will go ahead and see what the results are. I have read online that others have similarly had success. Also, Trance Audio says that their system is entirely removable, so if I'm not pleased with the results, I will just remove and try on a different instrument in the future. Alright, let's talk about amplifiers. I have been using the Schertler David for the past several years. I've also used the larger Unico and smaller, I believe you pronounce it Gila, but I find the David to be the perfect size. I think it sounds great. The only complaint I have had is that several years ago Schertler switched from a true spring reverb in their amplifiers to a digital emulation of a spring reverb. I personally prefer the older spring reverb and find the current reverb to be a bit muddy and modulated. I think overall I prefer either the real spring reverb or a true digital reverb that is more sharp and clear sounding. Compared to the AER Compact 60, the Schertler does have a few more features. Most I personally don't utilize, and so I may prefer the AER for being a bit simpler, but ultimately I'll go with whichever sounds the best to me. Different than the AER, the Schertler has independent channel volume levels in addition to gain level. There is a master reverb and then independent reverb levels for each channel. The Schertler has a fixed master high-pass filter switch and also a mute switch. I personally find this a little frustrating because there is no indicator light for the mute, and so every now and then it is accidentally turned on and isn't immediately obvious. On channel 1, the Schertler has a setting to add what they call warmth. This cuts the highs quite a bit, kind of the opposite effect of the color option on the AER, which boosts the highs. On channel 2 of the Schertler, there's also a resin filter, which is similar to a notch filter. It has only two fixed frequency settings at 240 and 150 Hz, and a level setting. This can be used to cut common problematic frequencies that many acoustic instruments seem to resonate at. Different than the Schertler, the AER reverb and other effects can be panned between the two different channels, but in practice this is similar to having independent levels. It also has a convenient switch on the back which can bypass the reverb and other effects into the DI output. This is great if the amp is maybe being used only for monitoring purposes only and you want a very clean direct signal to front of house. I also like that the auxiliary input on the AER has an independent volume control. Now I feel like whenever you talk about the AER Compact 60, everyone then asks, well, what about the Udo Roesner Da Capo 75? Before I purchased my AER Compact 60, I did play an Udo Da Capo. It sounded amazing, but so did the AER. I personally did not hear a discernible difference between the two. It does have quite a few different features that may make it a more preferable option for some, but I think actually made it less desirable for my needs. The Udo does not have a single sum DI out. It has two separate DI outputs, one for each channel. I think this is maybe great and preferable if you are running two different instruments through the amp, and then you have the flexibility to provide the two different signals to an external mixer, but I wish there was an option or a switch to have a single summed DI out. Although alternatively there is a summed unbalanced auxiliary out. Also, as stated before, I really like that the AER has an external switch to bypass the effects to the DI out. The Udo Da Capo has this function, but it is as an internal jumper that has to be changed inside the amplifier. Alright, so what I'm going to do today is compare the Schertler and AER with the K&K. Then I'll install the Trance Audio pickup and compare the two amplifiers again. I will first record the acoustic guitar with an external mic for comparison. Then with each amplifier I will separately record the DI output and the amplifier mic'd with an AKG C414 approximately 12 inches away from the cabinet and centered on the cabinet. The DI will be recorded through the line input of an SSL Pure drive, and the microphones through a Design M101 preamps. Both of these are quite transparent and have no EQ control, so it'll be just direct signal directly from the DI or the microphone. The amplifiers will first be set with flat EQ and no reverb, and then later I'll adjust to a more preferred setting with reverb and demo with each pickup. Well, there you have it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I think I shared plenty of my thoughts earlier, and I think I'll be taking more time to continue to explore and decide what pickup and amp combination I will be going forward with. I think every piece of equipment I've demonstrated today sounds great, and there is no best or worst option, just different, and I think the different sounds and features are going to appeal to different individuals. Some initial thoughts I have are that both amplifiers have the ability to get quite loud. I think louder than would be practical for either amp in most settings, although the AER does seem to have a bit more volume and punch to it. With both pickups, I was pretty immediately prohibited from increasing the master volume of the amps much louder than demoed due to feedback without significantly cutting the mids and some bass. This then turns into a bit of a difficult balance between cutting feedback and preserving overall tone with only the onboard EQ options. For this reason, I think continuing to utilize an external preamp and other processing tools with a parametric EQ will still be preferable for myself. I think another consideration is that external mic placement can significantly affect the sound of the recorded amplifier, and although I think this demo did capture the overall sound of the amps well, I was a bit surprised to hear that the recorded mic sound was a bit more brittle and thin than I heard with my own ears while adjusting amp settings in my room. Well, thanks for listening. Please take the time to like this video, and if you want to hear more than just the same two riffs that I've played over and over again, please check out and follow my channel. Not exactly sure what this channel is or what I'm doing, but please feel free to come along for the ride. Thanks.